but sales skills are important in many careers, even if you're not a salesperson. Successful salespeople start with listening. I'm excited about tonight's webinar because we're going to have the presentation of sales skills for non-salespeople presented by Ms. Kylie Romero. This webinar is part of a free alumni career webinar series from the Alumni Career Lab that provides monthly conversations with experts about a variety of industry and professional development topics. Today's presentation is being recorded and it will be archived on the Alumni Association website for members to access on demand. Find a link to that and more at alumnicareerlab.com. Questions are welcome anytime during tonight's event. Type them into the chat box on the right side of your screen whenever you think of them, or you can also email them to us as well. Kylie will answer the questions at the end of the webinar. If you're on Twitter tonight, tweet at us about this webinar and other career topics using the hashtag HireACat. We'd love to hear from you. Now, a little bit about our speaker. Kylie began her career in sales in Tucson and quickly distinguishing herself amongst her peers, reaching 194% to gold. That's a big number. This allowed her to expand her career nationwide, selling for some of the largest companies in the world. After an almost 20-year career, she decided to start her own firm called Solomon Solutions Consulting. Her firm helps organizations become the best place to work for their industry while helping individuals achieve their career goals. She's the president and founder. I'd like to give a huge thanks to Kylie for taking the time to be with us and share her expertise with UA alumni tonight. Now I'll turn things over to Kylie, who will tell you a little bit more about herself and walk you through her presentation.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining. I want to make sure that everybody so if you can hear me, yes. A little bit about myself. Not only have I been in sales for over 20 years, and thank you so much, Cendric, for allowing me to have this opportunity. You've done a phenomenal job. You've done a phenomenal job. Pleasure working in the entertainment industry for the last 25 years. Recording my own music, or working on discussion, working team with I also now am working with my daughter, who's 22 years old. Her name is Taylor, and we moved to LA about 5 years ago to dream and act LA to work for Marie Austin. From there she went on to like neighbors, modeling campaign. Is there trouble hearing me? Can everybody hear me? Okay, can you guys hear me now? Is it clear? Okay, so everyone can hear me. Okay, so I'm going to continue. Okay, great. So just backing up a little bit, in addition to, I don't know if you guys can hear this or not, so I'm just going to go through it one more time. In addition to working in corporate America for 20 years, I also have had about 25 years of experience working in the entertainment industry. So I was lucky enough to write and record my own music in Nashville. I worked production on The Scorpion King with The Rock. And I now am helping my daughter navigate her career. Her name is Taylor. She's 23 years old, and she is an actress, and she has been pretty blessed for the last 5 years to have consistent work throughout the entertainment industry, whether it is modeling. She helped launch a fashion line that was very successful. She's also a writer. Part of that writing is also writing content for some of the biggest names in Hollywood, which has been very cool to see her develop. She also has worked with me. We're working on a project right now where we came up with the logo, the content, the social media, the website for a client that we were able to help secure a rather large investor. So I will talk more to that during my sales presentation, but I just wanted to thank all of you for being on. I'm going to X out of the camera so I can look at my slide, show a little bit better. Feel free to, while I'm talking, if there's something you don't understand or you need me to clarify, please feel free to type in that message box and tell me to maybe slow down, or if there's a question that I need to clarify, or if you have a question in the middle of what I'm talking about. So again, I appreciate everybody being on, and let's go. So really the main thing that I spoke to about a year ago with U of A when I went to go speak with Susan was what part of my career can help other people. And with starting my company, very passionate about helping companies hire and hire and retain the right talent. So sales is one of those industries that if you're new to it, or even if you're in your career, halfway or long term, here's some universal questions and universal steps that you want to take before even taking a sales job. And really, you're only as good as your team. So, what that means, of course, I have the famous Steve Kerr, who we all love, 7-time NBA champion, former U of A basketball player. And really, when you're up for a sales position, and these are things that should really be, this first slide are things that you need to really ask in the interview process. It is absolutely crucial to whether or not you're going to be successful or not. If you really have a clear understanding on this particular question, why is the position open? So if it's anything other than the person was promoted, they left to go take care of their children, which is having a job inside the home, they went to another competitor, or they're retiring, if it's really any of those, if it's not any of those, then it's probably a position that you don't want to take. And those are fair responses. And you want to really understand if the territory is a high turnover territory, meaning that there has been several reps maybe in the past year or in the past 5 years. So if there's been more than a couple reps in the last couple of years that were in that job and for whatever reason they left, that's probably not a good position to take because it has something to do with the goal or it has something to do with the management. So that's the very first question that you want to ask. The next one that you really want to research your direct manager. And manager should really be someone who is a coach. And if you think about the perfect coach, you think about the perfect manager, that is Steve Kerr. If you look at Steve Kerr's career, he's been consistent when he talks about who has helped him and who has helped him get to where he is at. And if you listen to any of his interviews, you don't hear the word I. You hear, we did this, we did that. So you really want to ask questions to the hiring manager. This is the person that you are going to be working with, the one that is going to be responsible for viewing your work, and also not only responsible for that, but who's going to recognize your assets and who's going to be able to develop you. And that's what you want. So, what is also their sales record? What made them become a manager? Were they promoted within the company? What does their sales record look like? What this is going to tell you is this is going to tell you whether or not this is someone that you want to work for. I really don't liking the word work for because really it should be working with because you're all a team. Also, your team members. If you look at, again, I have to go back to the Golden State Warriors. If you look at why they won the last couple of championships, it's because they mentioned something called strength in numbers. So, what they look at is they look at we're all equal parts. We all have strengths, and we're all going to help each other develop our weaknesses. So, again, research your team members. Also, ask your team members as well as your direct manager what is their communication style. So, when I say communication style, I mean, how do they communicate? Are they texters? Do they do email? Are they people that like to pick up the phone? Learn as much as you possibly can when you are joining a team about your team members. Also, are they going to recognize you as an asset, or are they going to recognize you as a threat? So if you look at, when I go back to the Golden State Warriors, if you look at Kevin Durant, and right away a couple of the players went out and they flew out and they talked to him about why Golden State Warriors was a right fit for him in regards to what he was looking for, right? He was looking for a champion. So we know that this team, and it's all started, and the whole morale starts with the coach, which is Steve Kerr, is they saw Kevin Durant as an equal part. They brought him over, and again, they all work together, and that's why they're champions. So, really important to research who you're going to be working with and who you're going to be working for. Is your goal shared or is it individual goal? So, what this means, when you have a shared goal, that means it's you or somebody else in the territory. It can be you and somebody else, or it can be you and 10 other people. So that means that whatever your goal is, say the goal is 50,000 that you have to bring in, there's five of you or two of you who are responsible for that goal. If that is the case, you really want to dig deep and figure out what, again, their communication styles are. What are their best working practices? How are you going to be able to fit into that team and win at the end of the day? If your goal is individual, meaning that you sign up and you are responsible for a goal of, say, 10,000, then what I would do is I would ask to spend the day with a person either in the territory that might be doing a different job, or in your region, a territory that is similar to yours. So, for example, if you're in Tucson, you're not going to necessarily want to work with somebody in Phoenix or Los Angeles because those are much bigger markets. You want a true picture on what your market and what your job is going to look like. So ask to spend the day with somebody where you can shadow what they're doing. And that goes along with before you take the job. So this is all before you decide to take the job. You want a clear picture on what a day is going to look like for you. So ask what the most difficult customer is going to look like and what the best customer looks like. And again, I'd spend an entire day, because dealing with difficult customers and dealing with great customers, that's going to be the reality of your job. Be the master of your market. This is where your market is really the one that dictates what your goal is going to be. So before you take the job, again, this can be in the interview process, but you should always pay attention to what's going on in the market of what you're selling at all times, whether you've been with the company for 6 months or whether you've been with the company for 6 years. Research the product and their service that you're going to be selling. So definitely go online, see what the customers have to say, see what the stock is if it's that large of a company, and always make sure that your goal is attainable to the market. And this is a tagline that I put on my social media that got a lot of feedback. The market doesn't care about your goals, go accordingly. So you really have to pay attention to the market. When I say you can have a goal of 100,000, but if the market's not going to support that, then you're going to fail at that goal. And so, with recent graduates that I work with, or people for the first time going into sales, they may go into a sales position and all of a sudden start struggling because their goal is completely off. So, the best way that you can get as much information and you can know if your goal is attainable, and not that it's not going to be a challenge, but you want to have the tools in place that's going to allow you to attain that goal. You want to ask the direct hiring manager, whoever is interviewing you for the position, you want to ask to see the sales data numbers, not only for your territory, but also for your region going back at least 2 years. I think that going back at least 2 years is fair enough. And that way you can see, what did the territory do? What did it do in the last 3 years? What did it do in the last, well, 3 months? What did it do in the last year or two? So you can make sure that whatever goal that you're going to be accountable for matches the data. Basically the data supports the goal that you'll be given. Also, a big thing is ask what your market research is going to be. What does the company buy? Where do they gather the data? Do they do the data on their own? What market research out there is going to, again, support the goal that you'll be given? There's a famous quote by Bill Gates that says that even if you have $1, that $1 should be spent on marketing. So again, these are all pieces that really are going to have a lot to do with whether or not you're successful or not. You want to go into a sales position and have it be a fair playing field. And you also want to understand that, yes, it may be challenging, but you also have the right team in place that's going to be available and recognize what you have to offer and help you get there. Start solution selling. So sales is really about providing a solution to the customer. If you think about the reasons why you buy something, if you think about why you bought the last thing that you purchased, what did it solve for? Whether it was a business need or a personal need. It is always about the customer, identifying the need, and then having a solution. The four basic types of sales positions that you're going to be going into, or the basic types of this is entry level, or this can even be mid-career, is one of them is inside sales. And so what inside sales does, you're typically working inside a building. It is typically a call center atmosphere. You're either making several outbound calls a day or you're taking inbound calls, but it stands the same. You're looking to provide a solution based on what you learned about the customer. Outside sales. Outside sales is same thing. You're figuring out what the solution is. Is there a need there? How can I help the customer? You're typically working maybe outside of your home, outside of a car. You're traveling around either in a local territory, sometimes region, and nationwide. So it's an outside sales job. Maybe you go into the office a couple times a week. A hunter versus client sales. So a hunter role is really about all new business. So you're coming into the position, and what you're responsible for is getting brand new customers. Maybe these customers were buying your product and or service at one time, but they've fallen off. And so you're responsible for getting all new business. You're a hunter. Client sales is you already have a group of customers, a database of customers, a territory of customers where these are ongoing clients already. And your job is to really provide them the best customer service. So your job is to upsell, cross-sell, make sure that they have the right products and our services that fit the needs of their business. So it's the same thing. What am I solving for? Account management can be a little bit of both. So it can be a mix of we want you to go out and get new customers, and we want you to maintain the clients that we have. And you're really managing the entire account from the first time they become a buyer to they've been a customer for 5 years, and we're still servicing their accounts and maybe doing a 6 or month analysis to make sure that they have the best products and or services that you're offering. Know the story of what you're selling. So you really want to, before you make a phone call or before you set out into your territory, you really want to make sure that you're able to tell the story of whatever it is you're going to be offering to your customers. You want to make sure that you understand the features, the benefits. Are there any risks to what you're selling? So we talk about risks. This may be financial solutions that you're selling. This may be pharmaceuticals, medical device, when you have to really have a great understanding of the adverse reactions of your drug that you're selling or a medical device that you're selling. And that's really what the FDA requires, that you understand the benefits just as much as you understand the risks. So what are you solving for the customer? You always want to be on the customer's agenda. You always want to make it about them. And I think about this example that's kind of funny. I don't know if this has happened to any of you, but I was walking when I first moved to California. My daughter and I were walking in the mall, and there was a kiosk there of different things that were being sold, from hair care to lotion. And this man kind of just pulls me over and just sticks a curling iron in my hair. And the next thing I knew, I had my entire head was, curled, and it looked good. I'm not going to lie, but it was very bizarre to me because he didn't ask my name, and I'm very laid back, so it has nothing to do with whether it was a male or female. But I thought about my own sales interactions because he had no idea whether I needed a curling iron, whether I wanted to talk, and so he didn't develop any kind of need. And the last thing people want to be is sold. If you're right away going to throw everything at a customer that you can without asking them a question, if you don't sit down and say, how do you do this? What is your ideal package? If you could solve one thing within your business, what would that look like? You want to get in there and ask about the customer. And so when I was sitting there having my hair curled, I thought, I don't need a curling iron. And I immediately kind of shut down because I felt like I was being sold. Had he tried to talk to me, ask me questions, maybe, what is your biggest hair care concern and why? Do you have one? That might have been a better way to make it about, am I solving something for the customer? So you always want to be making it about them. There's a big difference between caring about your competition and understanding your competition. There's a lot of talk about as soon as you care about your competition, you've lost. Well, you don't necessarily need to care about your competition, but you do need to understand them because 9 times out of 10, you will definitely be asked about how your product and or service compares to them. So again, you want to educate yourself on the competition in your market, but you don't want to get all wound up and you don't want to care about what somebody else is doing. Just like in any area of your life, you want to really focus on your customers and focus on what you're selling. You cannot sell to a need that isn't there. And this is going to go against probably everything you're going to hear in sales training. You're going to hear everyone's a buyer and there's a need and you just have to uncover it. That's not actually true because we're not buyers for everything. So when it goes back to approaching people, or when it goes back to when a customer is not giving you any buying signals whatsoever and they clearly are not interested in talking, or they just don't have any, don't take it personal. Just realize at that point that they don't have a need right now, but it doesn't mean that they won't have it in 6 months. It doesn't mean that they won't have a need in a year. So what I always say, focus on your buyers, spend your time, your money, your resources, your budget. Definitely focus on them. And you can come back to the customer that said no to you. The business world is very small, so you never know when you're going to be selling something else and you're going to have to run into that customer again. And if you push them too hard when you haven't developed a need or there is no need, then you have lost credibility and it's harder for you to come back and try to talk to them about the next product and or service that you're going to be selling. So ask for what they never give. This really goes back to in any sales organization that you're going to be with, in any job, you're going to hear negativity, right? There's always the naysayers. There's always people saying, hey, I've never sold that. This territory has never done well. And you really have to ignore any of that and look at each customer and look at each sales transaction and sales call through your eyes. Okay, so yes, you do want to take into account the notes that may be in the customer relationship management system that talk a little bit about what the customer likes and dislikes. But at the end of the day, you really want to be able to look at the big picture for yourself. The market share that I had that doubled, and why I'm talking about sales is because I took on that attitude. I was in a territory that was failing. I was like the sixth rep, and I basically didn't listen to any of the stuff I told you guys to do, but I was very motivated. I was very motivated to get into particular industry and to prove myself. I didn't really have anything to lose. Well, I left there at 194% to goal. And that was just because of the fact that I refused to look at the territory the way the prior reps had before. And I made sure that I understood my product, but I really focused again on my buyer. So have some confidence and try new things, and again, just really focus and make sure that you give yourself the opportunity and the chance to see it through fresh eyes. Tell your story. So when you are throughout your sales career, nobody can tell your story better than you can. And there's a difference between bragging and telling your story, but in sales, it's all about the documentation that you have. So I'm very, very big on document your sales successes in every single position that you have, because when you go and you interview for other positions, they're going to want to see what your manager said about you, what your customers said about you, and what your team members have to say about you. So the best way to capture this information is by email. Communicate through email as much as you possibly can. Make sure that if you have a conversation with a customer and it's a really great conversation and you're in person, ask that customer to send you an email and to write it into email. If you have a conversation with a team member and they're congratulating you, ask them to send that congratulatory praise through an email. Same with your manager. So I really look at email as two different things. Email is reflection and email is protection. And what I mean by that is in sales, there's something called a brag book. And again, it's really just your sales story. And when you start out in your sales career, you're going to want to add to that book. And it's like a binder. You're going to want to add to that book as much as you possibly can. And with emails, with your sales data, and nowadays with email, of course, everything comes over email. So sales contest winners, your sales scorecard, which is what you did for the territory, all of that's going to come over email. So I would recommend forwarding it all to your personal email, if not printing it out. The protection part of the email is sales is cutthroat. Sales is difficult. And that's why, as someone who's been in it for so long and working with a lot of recent graduates, and what I talked about at the beginning of the presentation in regards to having a great manager, having a great team, having people that realize your asset, that you're going to be an asset to the team, that you're part of what's going to make it successful, is it can get very difficult. And so when people start having trouble making their goal, the best way to communicate those concerns is over email. You want to do that pretty quickly because you do want to have recourse, because in sales, if you're not making your goal within 90 days for some company, you may be let go. Some companies are different, but I've been with companies, if you don't make your goal, if you're not trending to your goal in 90 days, then you're out of a job. So as soon as you have concerns, no matter if it's about your territory, if it's about your customer, any concern that you may have that you want to address, even if you had a conversation in person, you always want to follow up over email as much as possible. Part of what I do is I work with companies that have been through mediation and litigation. And let me tell you that email always wins out. We saw in this last election how important email was and how it played a role. And I touch on one more thing with that, which is just universal. Before you push the send button, picture your email on a billboard. In fact, picture it on a billboard on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood, where there's millions of tourists and millions of people coming through there. You always want to be comfortable with the email that you're sending, because email never goes away. And working with some of these companies who have been through mediation, who have been through litigation, if an employee has been really, really on top of documenting their concerns and documenting what happened in the job, it's really difficult for the company to say this employee didn't care. What it looks like is this employee cared a lot, and they were actually doing two jobs. They were doing their job and actually trying to get their manager to do theirs. So email is incredibly important, but the piece of email is always make sure that you forward that to your personal email or that you copy it, because you got to remember that whatever laptop you're working on that you're given by the company, it's their company property. So you want to make sure that you have this documentation. I started to document and pull my emails probably about 2005, 2006, when all company communication was over email. So I have every congratulatory email from every partner I've had, from every manager I had. And I have kept those because as you start to rise up the ranks and as you start to be successful, you have negativity, and it's really hard again to say something when you have an email that's praising you. So I cannot talk more about how important email is. And diversity. Diversity always wins, whether you're using your background, your many talents to bring to the job. When I say diversity, we're looking at diversity when it's on your resume. So a lot of people are afraid of, wow, I've had, 3 different jobs and 6 years, and I've been in this industry and that industry. If you've been successful in every industry you've worked in, then that's fantastic. I've been successful in healthcare sales, software sales, human resource sales, advertising sales. I also have been in entertainment. that has really been a big plus for me. And so recruiters and managers are now looking, what is the full picture of this person, right? Another thing about telling your story, that's very, very important when it comes to just building that relationship with your customer. You want to get to know them. I heard from a really intelligent realtor that just became a realtor who's actually on this call right now, Javier Alonio. He told me, we had a conversation about sales, and I was asking him what's made him so successful in such a short period of time. And he said, sometimes I don't even discuss um, what kind of house they're looking for. I just try to get to know them. And through trying to get to know them, guess what? They get to know him. So that's part of telling your story, right? And people buy from people because you can go to another company, but who is that customer used to working with? Who is that customer used to dealing with? Well, they're used to dealing with you. I have a client that was with a company for 14 years, and I was helping him transition to a new company, and it was pretty scary for him. And he was able to call up every single customer. They remembered him, not necessarily the name of his company. So always make sure that when you're having these conversations with a customer, when you're having conversations with somebody you met in business, always make sure that you tell them a little bit about yourself. Just one more example of telling your story. I was able to work with a really talented fitness guru by the name of Matt Billinger, who is a Marine and Army veteran. And as we were talking about how to brand himself and how to tell his story on social media and how he can kind of separate himself from everybody else, right? There's a million fitness people, but how do you get people to pay attention to you? How do you gain impact? So as I was talking to him, he mentioned that he was a veteran. And of course, I thanked him for his service. And I said, why aren't you talking about this? This is huge. Like, we love our veterans. Thank you so much. Tell your story. So as soon as he started to tell his story, as soon as we got a branding plan together for him, I think it was a month later, he had GNC calling him for endorsements. So it is really important to tell your story. And again, your story is your truth. Your story is what makes you special, and don't ever back down from it, okay? Because that's very different from I did this, I did that. You always want to remember that you are solving something for someone. Solving something for a customer is a customer for a lifetime. And so I'm about done. And the best way to connect with me, I don't know if Cindric wants to ask some questions, or if you guys want to ask me some. But the best way to connect with me, I honestly just joined LinkedIn. I'm not even going to pretend about that. I joined LinkedIn a couple months ago. I don't spend a whole lot of time on there. Because I manage a few of my accounts as well as my own. So the best way to get a hold of me, you want to talk, it's either emailing me, get on Instagram, or get on Facebook. And I'm building up my LinkedIn profile. But like I said, I spend a lot of time on social media. So that's the best way to get a hold of me.
Thank you, Kylie. Right now, do we have any questions for Kylie? I know I have a couple that I would like to ask her, but before that, I'd like to open up to everyone else. I see we have some in the chat box from Nicholas. Kylie, are you able to see the chat box?
Let me see. Let me go. Okay. Yeah, I see it. What do you attribute your success to? I really attribute my success to a lot of things, but when I think about what gave me the advantage, I think it was being a young mother. So I had my daughter at 19 years old, and this was 23 years ago, and it wasn't. It was, it seems like it wasn't that long ago, but none of my friends had kids early, and everybody was off at spring break or doing this or doing that, and I was writing music or I was in school. So it really gave me an advantage because I wasn't really wasn't interested or really didn't care about a lot of the things that most 19-year-olds cared about. And so I really kind of had this like no fear kind of attitude where I thought, well, if I can raise a good human being and if I can provide for my daughter, then I can do anything. So I really have to attribute that to, I mean, I'm being honest, that was my biggest advantage, as well as just having a very supportive family, parents who said, you can do whatever you want no matter what. And so I think kind of the attitude of putting those blinders on, and I think of a racehorse, when you're running a race, those blinders are on so you're not looking at any of the challenges and obstacles right on either side of you. And I have to say that, having my daughter at a young age gave me huge advantage, a family that cared about me, and just really not being afraid. So that's different from not caring about what people think, because I absolutely think you have to. I think going out into the public and acting and saying whatever you want isn't working, especially now. So I think definitely caring a lot, but being completely fearless.
Brittany, I see you also have a question. Are you able to answer that, Kylie?
Yeah. So what's your number one piece of advice for someone going into their first sales interview? I think the team is so, so important. In sales, it is all about morale. It is all about who's going to help you get to that goal. So why is the position open? And again, there are those fair answers. Someone was promoted, someone went to a competitor, someone decided to start their own business. You really want to go with your gut feeling. So if something seems off in an interview or even off in life in general, it's best to go with your gut. If something doesn't sound right in the interview process, if the goal sounds off, then you really want to just not continue in the interview process. Really. I mean, I know that interviewing is stressful, it's difficult to find a good job, but it's even more difficult to be in a bad job, because then you really have two jobs. You're in a bad job, but you're also looking for a job. And we all know that looking for a job is a job within itself. So always go back to common sense and wisdom and go with your gut and really ask those first questions that I had on that first slide. What kind of manager do they have? Do they have any of the attributes that Steve Kerr has? What are the players like? Are they going to see you as an asset? Are they going to bring you in? So really those three questions are the first questions that you should be asking prior to taking the job or even going any further in the job.
Great answer. I know I have a question for you as well. I mean, what's a typical day look like for you?
Well, with Solomon Solutions, it's gone in a lot of different ways for me. I was really set out to start the business after working, for many years. But the reason why I started Solomon Solutions is my daughter got very ill about 3 years ago. She was very sick. We couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. She was on the cardiac floor for a couple months, and I just was so busy working, and I never took off any time. And this is prior to Solomon's, and something really snapped at me and said, something's got to change here. We've got there's more to just goal, there's more to just work. It's about people, and how can I take my experience and help people. Solomon's has really changed over the last couple years as well. So again, I work with companies, but lately I've been working with a lot of entrepreneurs. Matt Billinger, I'm connecting and working with a very talented writer and musician by the name of Angelica Ray. I collaborate with my daughter. I also collaborate with my niece, who's an up and coming makeup artist. So, right now, it's really helping a lot of individuals in their branding. How do we separate their talent to what's going on already? And so, it's just a mix of things for me, whether it is helping a company implement solutions in regards to company policy, human resources, anything that comes to my hire to retire. But really, it always goes back to me every day on do unto others as you would have done to yourself. And that's really my mantra daily. So I've been blessed right now to have a mix of corporate and a mix of some Hollywood.
Great, thank you. I see Sean has a question for you in the chat box.
What do you think are the most important factors in long-term repeat clients? Solving for them. If you can solve for somebody something for somebody, and I meant to talk about this during my presentation, but I was working with a client that was trying to solidify an investor, and this investor was one of the first investors in Zico coconut water. They're also behind some of the biggest brands, Cirque du Soleil to name one. And this is a very person that's been an investor and very successful for many years. And I was trying to solidify or help my client solidify an investor through solving for the angst that she had, right? She was kind of unsure about how we take the company and tell the story of it completely different on social media than what other companies like it were doing. So I laid out a plan. I had never met her. In fact, it was an hour-long conversation, and after that, we were able to close the deal. But it goes back. I could hear in this woman's voice, as someone who's again been successful and has been and done, and I could hear in her voice that she needed to understand crystal clear what I was saying, even if I had to repeat myself several times, which I don't mind doing, by the way. But she wanted what was I solving for, right? An investor is a customer just like anybody else, right? And you have to treat them as such, and you have to be able to answer all the questions. You watch Shark Tank, same thing. You have to know your competition, you have to know the market. So I was able to solve for that. Well, this is a woman that I know that I can probably talk to in another 5, 10 years. I see this woman with just the relationship that I built for her because I made it all about what was important to her. So it always goes back to if you can solve something for a customer, they're never going to feel sold by you. So it doesn't matter if you change and go to a different industry. It doesn't matter if you're even going over to the competitor, but they'll remember that you're someone who was looking to help them. And people buy into value and they buy into solutions.
Great answer. Thanks, Kylie.
Sure.
Any other questions, please put in the chat box so we can get those answered for you. Just the last question I have for you, Kylie. Can you talk about the 194% to goal accomplishment? How are you able to accomplish that? What are some of the tactics that you use to create that type of number? That's an outstanding number.
Thank you. So I went into a territory for a rather popular statin. So a statin is a cholesterol drug, and I don't want to give out too much information about the name. I'm not sure what the rules are or any of that. But I joined a pharmaceutical company, and I was brand new to pharmaceuticals. And the manager had hired me because I had a very strong business to business background. And I tried to ask as many questions as I could, but I just didn't know enough about asking for data, and everything that I've presented today are things that I've gone through personally or with people that I'm working with and helping them transition what they're going through personally as well. So I'm trying to help as many people avoid as many obstacles as they can in their career. But I went into a job and I didn't realize the uphill climb that I had. And the statin market, when you think about statins, Lipitor, Crestor, Simvastatin, Vytorin, those are cholesterol drugs. And so I was selling one that was doing just absolutely horrible. And I got into the job and I was like, what did I do? I don't know why. I mean, honestly, I thought, how am I going to make this goal? And what I did is I just looked at the territory differently. I did have a shared goal, and I looked at the territory completely different. And I focused on the doctors that wanted to have conversations with me. So I'm calling on primary care physicians, I'm calling on some cardiologists, and all of a sudden I'm having these discussions that have to do with the anatomy and science. And I was just consistent. I didn't spend money on the offices that wouldn't talk to me. And I didn't go in and just drop off lunch just to have lunch. I wanted to make sure that I was making an impact, and I would just start talking. Excuse me, I just would start talking to them, and being from a very large family, a family of um, really like 400 or 500 throughout extended family, and having a big family in not only California but also in Tucson, I really had a good understanding of the Latino market, and I really understood the old school thinking of Latinos. And my mom's probably going to laugh, but just the old school thinking of my grandparents, they really don't want to be told anything, right? I mean, they're kind of in that old school mindset. And because there was a large demographic, I understood how to speak to physicians about them. And it always goes back to your product. The particular drug that I was selling had clinical data that had a superiority claim over one of the largest competitors. And I would speak to that every single day. I'd go in and say, if you have a patient that is 54 years old, they're diabetic, they have elevated LDL, this is this patient, and let me show you the clinical data. So it always went back to solving for that senior citizen or that person who has their daughter taking care of them or their son taking care of them or their grandchild taking care of them, not going back and forth to the doctor's office and really starting the patient out on a therapeutic dose for what they really needed, and not starting out with just the cheapest medication, because the cheapest or more cost effective medication is not going to get them to where they need to be, right? And it's going to elevate their risk for heart attack. It's going to elevate their risk for stroke. So I just really kind of go in and start talking about my family, try to get to know the physician. And I left there. I left that company with 194% to goal, and it actually is my territory beat one of the number one drugs or the number one drug that's ever been sold. So if anybody can guess that, then that would be really cool. But it just goes back to being consistent, and it also goes back to what I was talking about. Is I had everybody telling me everything, right? Negative. This is never done well. There's too many stands. It's a crowded market. And I really made sure that the doctors understood the adverse reactions, because that was part of my job. This is nausea, myalgia, what the risks were for the medications too. And I think the doctors realized that I was not somebody trying to sell them. I was somebody who came from a family of a grandfather that had a quadruple bypass in his 50s. I come from a family of people who have diabetes type 2. So I'm very passionate about them. I've seen their struggle. So again, telling some of my story and getting on their side and identifying with them, and not honestly going to the physicians that weren't buyers. And that saved me a lot of time and a lot of money.
Thank you. I see Javier has typed the question in the chat box. If you want to answer that one.
See, is it down to the bottom?
Yes, his question, if you can't see it, his question is, how do you effectively manage your time as your business grows?
That's really hard. I think that you have to be, first of all, if you're talking about sales or you're talking about, you have to really look at the big picture of what it is you're trying to do. And definitely whatever company you're working for should have tools in place that are going to allow you to capture the data of each sales conversation. So, and this is really for any type of business that you're doing. So if you're in sales or you're a realtor, you should have some sort of CRM, a customer relationship management system, that will allow you to capture your data. It'll allow you to pull reports faster. And it's one place where you can have all your information, and you can say you're going to hit a certain part of town, you can pull all of those customers and just focus on that. So like, I definitely think that, writing out, every night, maybe what your three goals are to accomplish the next day. And I do that. I write it out either on my notepad on my iPhone. I mean, I talk it out on my notepad on my phone, or I write it out on a notepad. These are the three things that I want to accomplish, and just focus on getting those three things accomplished is probably the best way. Solomon's has taken many different turns, and so you just have to kind of go with it. And you may not always know exactly what to do at the time, but you'll be able to figure it out. So I hope that helps you. You definitely need to have, again, some sort of customer relationship management system that is holding your information. The days of spreadsheets and things like that, they're very, very time consuming. So the more strategic that you can be about what customers are focusing on and why, the better off you'll be.
Thank you for being able to answer that. See, Stephanie just entered a question as well for you. What is one of the biggest obstacles you've overcome in sales?
Oh, I've overcome a lot of obstacles in sales. I think that honestly to what other people have to say. Sales can be a super cutthroat environment, and you just always have to start every morning knowing your worth and knowing what you're capable of doing. And I really think that some of the challenges that I've had have been with, I mean, I'm just going to be honest, with managers that haven't always been on my side. I've had phenomenal managers, and I've had managers that they're just not Steve Kerr's, right? I mean, Steve Kerr is kind of like the perfect, manager in my mind when I think of a winning team. But I think, people leave bad managers, they don't leave companies. So it doesn't really matter if the company is the best place to work for or it's the best product or service. If your manager is not someone that's trying to develop you and your team doesn't see you as an asset, then you might want to leave that position. And I've done that, and a lot of people have done that as well, and it has been the best move. But I think not being supported, and if you're not supported, because you asked me what the biggest obstacle is, that's probably the biggest obstacle, not being supported and having negativity come over your way. I know we've all had it, whether it's a personal life or professional life, but really every day, remember your value. Everyday work. It doesn't matter if everybody else isn't working. It doesn't matter if everybody says it can't be done. Never stop working and never stop doing the job that you're being paid for, to the very, very fullest every single day. So that has allowed me just that mindset, when there hasn't been a lot of support or when my goal is daunting. Taking on that mindset is the best overcomer because it's really how you're going to look at a situation. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Kylie. If we don't have any other questions, I'll go ahead and wrap up, getting close to that time.